transportation and land use implications. We did spend some time earlier in the plan talking about whether that section of Route 6 that you have still southbound at that point, east of Jerome, headed up towards
Burger King, that little hill right here.
No, coming into the downtown. I'm sorry, you're headed west. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's not south.
If you pass Walgreens, you're headed up the hill, merges down to one lane.
Oh, yeah, going up to the top of the hill by Walmart, and then it goes back.
Yeah, we talked about that as being trying to retain that as a residential area.
Well, some of the widening plans are in small areas of widening, and then you said, like as you say, the problem is when they're no longer wide. That's another problem. It creates.
So this is why, again, I think for your consideration is the concept of a master plan for the board, or is a strategic recommendation that take a look at it. Does 33 and 34 look okay? 35 and 36, again, it just captures the Route 6, actually Route 6, I apologize, the Route 72 study. Again, it indicates that that study is hereby incorporated as part of this plan of conservation and development, and highlighted the major strategies and recommendations from that study in here for your consideration, including the plan.
So one question. 72, I mean, I know it took such a long time to get even to where it is today, but any thoughts about what could possibly happen with that in the future?
In terms of?
Being extended one more time? Or you think it's really?
I think it's unlikely.
Okay.
Broadening gets to be a lot more challenging.
Oh, yeah, but they've always talked about it going further than what it did, and I just
I think the city was probably lucky to get what it got.
Yeah.
I think that the problem that is being had in a lot of transportation projects is that the demand for projects is fighting with limited resources, and the maintenance responsibilities for what's already on the ground are increasing. And so I'm not really sure what's going to happen in the future in terms of major.
We'll have another 30 to 50 years probably.
A few more plans.
Yeah.
Anything else in terms of development issues? I'd like to start to get as much done on this as we can in the next half hour then. Is that fair? Infrastructure strategies deals with a couple of major things. It's community facilities and service. It's also our transportation system, both in terms of the roadway, pedestrians and bicycles, transit, and also the utility services that are available. In our discussion so far, we've talked about our conservation vision for the city, our development vision for the city, and this is really now the opportunity to align our infrastructure strategies with that, so that we're not talking about putting sewers in areas we think open space should be, and making sure that we have adequate transportation in the areas that we think are appropriate for business development. So that's the focus of the infrastructure strategies in the plan. The first section deals with community facility strategies. The entire key findings, conclusions, and issues has been updated for you based on information that has been done over the last 14 years since the 2000 plan. The city did a space needs study, which really looked at police, fire, city hall, etc. There's been analysis of, for example, heating systems or the mechanical systems in this building, and the circumstances that are occurring. The Board of Education has done enrollment projections, really looking at what's happening. This is partly what led to the realignment of some of the schools and construction of new schools, and reconfiguration or redistricting of some school districts to address the changing enrollment characteristics in the city. Looking at the space needs study, looked at the police and fire stations and their needs. We added in a discussion here of public works garage, the library facilities. Park and Rec has undertaken master planning activities in the last 14 years related to, first of all, comprehensively all of their park and recreation facilities, but also now going through the parks sort of one by one and really looking to try to improve and enhance those. So as a result, I think a lot of the work that would normally be conducted as part of the plan, the base information and material is sort of in place. And so the question, in a sense, for the plan, I believe, going forward, is what should our goals and strategies be? So the major goals and strategies in this section are located on pages 8, 9, and 10. Major goals are, number one, continue to efficiently provide facilities and services to meet the needs of Bristol residents and businesses. Number two, and this really grows out of what's happened over the last 10 years, is establish a comprehensive process for acquiring or disposing of property. If you're going to acquire stuff or you're going to dispose of stuff, go through a planning process to really understand what it is we're hoping to accomplish, either by acquiring or disposing, and make sure that it makes sense. Addressing identified municipal facility and service needs. There are some needs that came out of the space needs study, both in terms of maintenance and what we've got, but also some improvements to address changing programmatic requirements. And then finally, provide a broad range of human service and educational opportunities to Bristol residents who desire or need them. So that's kind of a quick overview of the community facilities section. Did you have any questions or comments on any of the findings or conclusions or the background information I put together for you?
Are any of these needs being addressed, you know?
Which page are you looking at?
The 9.
Are they being addressed? I think they're being discussed. I think they're on the back burner. I don't believe that they've emerged as a strong action plan yet to take care of these things. And I think there's other things which is on the city's agenda at the moment, but these needs will not go away.
That's part of why
So I think I don't think there's any imminent goal.
I don't know if you want to get, how deep you want to get into wordsmithing at this hour. I mean, there's some wordsmithing. I think the key thing is that the commission, again, do you agree with the goals and policies that are outlined here in terms of what's proposed to be accomplished, and then do you agree with sort of the level of action that the city should be taking on these? Again, many of these are in the current plan. Some have been modified. There's some new things here, but fairly consistent with the positions we've taken previously.
Because I think before page 8 is mostly factual. Anything on page 8 in terms of the goals or policies that you're not comfortable with, or I think Alan's got any there edits that I need to share with me. I'll take care of those. Sure. If there's anything that's policy oriented here, chime in. Page 9, as John pointed out, this page 9 is the identified facility needs which are on the radar screen, exactly what the priorities are and when they're going to be taken care of. But I think pointing these out in the plan can actually help us get state or federal grants, or could be used to prioritize these actions, et cetera, in the future. Any thoughts here?
I have just kind of a background question. The information that precedes these, that brings the commission and the community up to date as to key findings, conclusions, issues. I presume that much of that was the result of not just the space needs study, but interviews with people who are involved with these facilities on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, if the commission doesn't recall or whatever, as part of my research investigation on this, I interviewed a number of people, both municipal officials, department heads, but also people citywide who had insight and perspective on issues facing the city. So a lot of that information affected my research and investigation of the situations facing you. So for example, the space needs study, which is conducted and is on the city website, doesn't really address public works facilities, but I interviewed public works facilities and park and rec staff as well, and that really provided a lot of the information which is in here. And I think as we get to the point where the draft plan comes together, we're going to be sharing this information with city departments, so if there's things that they would like to add or supplement, we can evaluate that information and consider it for inclusion.
On page 6, Parks and Rec, would you want to include in there that they already purchased an additional athletic field? Which they did.
So the renovations that they're currently doing?
The one from the Blue Water
New
Department.
apartment.
Yeah, that was a relatively recent purchase.
Yeah.
Talked to so that was okay.
The area we spend most of our time talking in terms of park and recreation is the pressure that they're having on their existing fields.
Which one of the reasons they mentioned that, because they did buy one.
The focus ended up being on, they feel they need to go to lights and artificial turf. And the challenge is the expense of that, and also the rivalry, because the most advantageous location for that would probably be a high school. But Bristol has 2, so the question is who gets it first. And we probably can't do both at the same time, and the challenges that come with trying to manage that situation. So, it was an interesting discussion.
Could we put something in here to keep existing parks or athletic fields from schools that have been shut down? I only say that because Jennings School is being sold as development. The athletic fields behind it, after a certain term, will be up for sale. There are at least 3 or 4 ball fields that could be made out of that, or any fields. We're already at a crunch for the athletic department. The Park and Rec department having sufficient public athletic fields, selling those fields if the developer wants them, when there is still enough field behind that school to give them what they want. Why should we lose it?
Yeah. So I think I understand your thought. I'm wondering if on the bottom of page 8, policy 7A, right now says retain city-owned properties such as schools rather than selling them if the city determines that there's likely to be a future need or an alternative municipal use for the property. Then you'd rather just focus on schools. I think if we say such as schools and recreation fields or playgrounds,
Yes.
would make it clear that we're not just talking buildings, we're
Yeah.
talking about the other amenities.
Because they're just, you hear it all the time. And Jennings School is one of those schools that just kind of jumps out. They have the athletic field behind it, the developer wants to buy it, so he's kind of not optioned it, but is hinting they may sell it so that they can develop it into more housing, really, never know.
Yeah.
Alan, is there anything going on with Jennings School that you know of?
I have not heard anything.
Last I heard, developers were still working on it, and I think they're waiting to see if they can get the field.
Oh, really? Before they do anything?
The field makes it more attractive for what they want to do.
Well, we have kind of a similar situation with O'Connell with the gym. So,
The problem with the gym is if it floods, whoever buys it has to fix it. That can be
but
expensive.
the question is whether or not, in terms of a neighborhood recreational facility, it has value or not. So,
It is something that should be kept.
it's part of the comprehensive analysis of
Yeah.
these types of situations. So I think calling it out here in the plan, we can't figure out all of these, but making sure that,
If it benefits the recreational needs of the city, then it should be kept.
Well, I do think
Well,
if you limit the wording of just the schools, it sounds like,
Right.
you know, we talk about buildings, whereas it may be a land, it just may be land that talk about that has a ball field on it.
Schools and its adjacent athletic fields, like
You
the
can't
ballpark.
assume that I think building land goes with building, I guess you have to put in both.
Yeah.
Kind of like putting your kid in the shower and saying, take a shower, you hope they're gonna hit the water, you hope they're gonna use soap. It's not always the case. Don't ask me how I know that.
Experience.
I've,
So I think the goal and the policies on page 10, oftentimes the plan of conservation and development deals with the physical facilities that the city has. And so we focus on situations, we don't tell the Board of Ed what their class sizes should be or how to reconfigure their schools, but we'd like to make sure that if we're going to need additional land for a school site, that we've got it, or that we have some flexibility, because planning is really about identifying the constraints or the opportunities the city may have. Some of the policies in this goal tend to get more into sort of the social area than the physical area. So the only thought here overall was for these are essentially policies which have carried through from the 2000 plan. They're organized under this goal. So I've carried them forward for your discussion, et cetera. But they fall really kind of on the edge of the physical issues which are typically associated with the plan. So I just wanted to bring this to your attention.
You think they should stay in, they can stay in if you think that they're
part of our plan.
no.
They're all part of Bristol. Citizens, homeless, special needs. My daughter's special needs, she's part of Bristol. You know, kids play for Bristol Little League, they're part of Bristol. Therefore, they would be part of the plan. We're planning on them to take over. Kind of a scary thought at times. But yes, it is. They are part of the plan.
I agree, leave it in.
So I think this is probably a reasonable break spot here because transportation could get a little, is that fair?
Yeah, I'll go with that.
I think my goal here, just in terms of schedule, my hope in terms of the overall schedule on the plan was that at about now, we would have been through all of the booklets and in fact have approved questions for the telephone survey. So we have a telephone survey included as part of our scope of work. I have the telephone survey consultant on hold. What I'm currently anticipating is that if we could get together to finish this booklet sometime in October, that would allow us either at that meeting or at our first meeting in November to sign off on the telephone survey, and I can get this telephone survey in the field before Thanksgiving, and then also be working on actually putting the draft plan together.
Is this the last one?
This is, yes. So at this point in time, there's other elements that need to go along with the plan in terms of implementation and introduction, conclusion, et cetera. But this is the last sort of major policy element. So we don't have to have a special meeting, is my thought. I feel the pressure to work with the commission to make sure the plan is adopted by July 1 of next year. That's our drop dead. So I think us having the opportunity to work on the plan, get it prepared, massage it a little bit, and then start to share it with the community at a public meeting or something like that after the first of the year gives us a chance to tweak it. We pretty much have to pull the trigger on the plan by about March. And the reason is the state statutes require a 65-day period between when we pull the trigger and the public hearing. And I prefer not to do it in April for a June hearing because that gives us no room. So I prefer to pull it in March for a May hearing, which gives us till June to adopt it and be effective by July. So I think if we could get together to just finish up pages 12 through
And
12 through 32.
Well, what do you think, maybe an hour? Could this be tacked on to our regular?
I
I'm just asking.
You're a little tack on.
Is it a
Here we
regular
go.
planning commission meeting? It all depends on what the agenda is.
Find an agenda that ain't busy. I mean, you're coming up to winter time, and just too much going on.
No?
I think this is best served as a separate, if you're gonna,
All right, just asking.
maybe hold a separate meeting.
Yeah.
You tried.
That's right.
Everyone will be fresher. I think part of the problem is finding a day in October
That's right.
to do it. If you want us to throw some dates out now, or you want to try and do,
Well, do what you did last time, 2, 3,
does
4
anybody,
dates.
are there, well,
Do we want to do it before the planning commission?
yeah, let me put it this way, the week that's actually the most wide open, at least from my standpoint, and I think from others' standpoint as well, is the week of the planning commission meeting on the 29th. So
you're talking like Monday or Tuesday?
So that Monday or Tuesday, I know that's kind of a pain, but are you available on the 27th?
Yeah, I'd like to move it up if we can, and the only reason being is that I'd like to get the survey done, and I'd like to get it in the field. So I'll follow whatever schedule works for the members of the commission, but if we can move things along, I think it gives me just a little bit more
So you're looking
navigation.
at something like the 20th and 21st?
You said you couldn't make the 20th, right?
Yeah, no, my schedule in October is crazy also.
How about the 22nd?
I'm not available. My schedule in October is
Mine's crazy too.
kind of ugly. Well, you could always bring up the
Maybe Saturday morning.
Saturday mornings again.
I know that nobody is wild about that option. I mean, I like everybody, I value my weekends, I'm sure you do too. It may be the best option available given some of the other scheduled conflicts that we're working with. I mean, the other option is if you want to hang in there for another hour tonight, we might be able to get through it in another hour. So I think those are probably the choices available.
Call.
Either another hour tonight or a Saturday.
I won't be able to stay, but I know.
Well, what's the 16th look like?
What day is that?
Thursday.
That's 2 weeks from today?
Yeah.
No, 2 weeks from tomorrow.
Tomorrow. I know I can't make it. I got another meeting.
So I think we're like I said, we're either looking at a Saturday or.
What's next Wednesday look like?
I won't be here. I'll be in Florida.
Okay, well, good. Good for you.
No, I have an investment conference.
Well, that's all right. Whatever you're going there for, it's good for you.
Oh, boy.
This is tough.
It is.
I think.
Well, I don't mind a Saturday. I don't want it to be at 11 o'clock
No.
because I want to get my day.
Right.
I have my
That's
day.
Bob's philosophy.
I agree. I
7 in the morning, let's start.
I'm working with that. Well, the problem's got to have a place to do it.
Right.
And if we do it on a Saturday, we'll have to do it at the library, which is fine. And I forget what time the library opens, so I think they open at 8:30, so it may be comfortably at 9 o'clock.
And that's fine. At least it's just not kind of, going towards midday and you got a
Right.
regular day.
I think
Yeah.
my goal would be very targeted. I think that my goal would be to finish up booklet 7 from page 12 on. Let's do that. I mean, I think that our next meeting, which is at the beginning of November, I will have the survey questions for us then. I could try to get them done in time, but I prefer to have time to think about those questions because I think they're important. Which would make our next meeting a little bit shorter because all we really need to do is bless the survey questions and then we go into the field.
Okay.
So my suggestion would be Saturday the 11th.
No, it's Columbus Day, it's Columbus Day weekend.
Guys.
Yeah.
Public sector.
I'll be in Massachusetts running through
Well,
the
you're
woods.
gonna have to call the libraries and see.
Well, yeah,
what's
but,
available.
yeah, and I don't think that'll be an issue, I shouldn't say that, I should say. Hopefully it's not an issue.
Right.
The 18th.
The 18th, I think we'll have enough time, Zoom.
I'll be in the woods running after people.
On the 18th?
Hopefully not with weapons.
I'm out of town that weekend.
Kinda.
We knew people wouldn't be able to make every single day.
Well,
you
that's true.
know.
Do it the 18th, whoever shows up, shows up.
9
9
a.m.
o'clock on the 18th.
And when is our next official meeting for this?
It's in November. We didn't, I don't think we picked the day only because this room wasn't available, and I don't think one of the things we can do on October 18th is nail down the meeting date in November. All right, so 9 a.m. on Saturday the 18th at the public library, and our goal is to try to be out by like 10:30.
And I'm very confident that's not going to be a problem. So thank you very much.
All right, and I would say that if people can't make it, but you have comments, email them to us or call our office. We'll be glad to talk with you, because I think everybody's input is really important. And there's been a lot of good ideas, and we don't want people to say, well, I didn't get to the meeting, so I'm not lost. If there's something in there that's just burning you, let us know. Even if you send us an email, we'll...
Don't be trying to get out while the public can make
Oh,
it
yeah.
done.
Go ahead.
So 9 a.m. And once I confirm that with the library in terms of the room, I will send everybody an email,
Great.
and then we'll put together an agenda and we'll go from there.
Cool. Next item on the agenda?
I want to put my agenda away.
Oh.
Any comments from the public?
Absolutely, thank you for asking. Chairman Dietz.
Yes.
A lot of the presumptions that are made in the wording of this POCD is based on some presumptions of what's going to happen in the future, as you folks have kind of indicated will happen. And Glenn, just as an aside, one of those questions I asked you last time, and I'm referring to booklet number 4, and if you can refer to page number, I believe it's 14. Okay. I asked you the question regarding the employment in Bristol and the increase in employment. But the increase, as I had suggested, seems to indicate that it is mostly in the service sector. And when you talk about employment in the service sector, you're talking about employment that's generally employment that is not as well paid as full-time employment. That's number one. Number two, there's also the ancillary hardships that are incurred when people have multiple part-time jobs. And they're not as well-paying as the conventional, the standard full-time jobs that most of us have grown to recognize as the better jobs. Okay? So what I'm talking about is that there's a presumption made on the maybe taxes generated from that kind of income based upon the ability to procure, let's say, housing. And I'm talking about purchase, not rental. And a whole host of other attributes that come along with full-time employment that do not come with part-time employment. In addition to that, we're also talking about the ability of, or the actual tax base eroding because of the lack of full-time employment in town. And that seems to be a trend that's not only Bristol-wide, but nationwide. So I think that's an important component to throw into the calculations that you guys are making about the possibilities that you're talking about. The second assumption that's being made is that, and I, in deference to this gentleman over here, that there's a distinct possibility that the accomplishments or the purported accomplishments of Renaissance downtowns will not come to fruition. And I think a lot of the suppositions are based upon the success of that project. I could be wrong, but that's the sense I have here. And I don't know if there has been any kind of contingent thinking in the event that A, that doesn't take place, and B, again, I come back to the increasing, rise of part-time jobs as opposed to the traditional full-time jobs that provided people with the ability to buy housing, which is not present in this current economy. So I think those are two financial and both cultural and social aspects that need to be calculated in all the wording definitions that you guys are using that, frankly, will become codified as time goes by. You guys are the spearhead. It's what everybody in town, most people in town trust you to provide for the right kind of wording that will become codified as time goes by. And I think it's important that you guys are aware of the possibilities that, one major component of your plan may not come to fruition. I'm also, and I'm doing a little bit of,
Frank, can I just interrupt you one second?
Sure.
Did you want to speak tonight or not?
He can take my time if there's not time to.
Okay.
I mean, we have 5 2-minute segments.
Oh, yeah,
There's
yeah.
only 2 of us. Thinking that, gee, that's just 10 minutes. So it's 5 minutes. Which brings to mind another thing. Just as an aside, but it's an important aside because it does play to the concept of, it sounds like I might be sounding a little hyperbolic, but democracy. Okay? Because, in the last POCD meeting that we did have, we had a city employee actually calling the shots on how a meeting that was basically a meeting conducted by people who were duly elected by extension of the mayor was more or less steamrolled into a gag order. So what I'm suggesting is that, we go according to...
Can I ask you a question?
In a minute. I just want to finish my thought on this, and then you can ask me a question, because this may be,
Sure.
this may play a part. If you bear with me, the city charter of the city of Bristol says this about boards and commissions and meetings in general. And I don't know if you're aware of Section 49, but for those of you who are not, all board meetings shall be public, and all meetings of boards or commissions whose duties involve the transaction of public business. And I defy anybody to say that this is not public business. Okay? Shall be held at accessible stated public places. Thank you very much. This is. I appreciate that, Commissioner Veets. And all meetings and the minutes thereof shall be open to the public. Any elector, that's Sean and I, and actually all of you too, shall have the right to appear and be heard at any such meeting as to any business proper to come before said Board of Commission. That's again Section 49. And the legislative history about the, engendering of this particular comments are beginning 1931 and are now current. Now, if we are going to conduct business according to Robert's rules, and that's usually the way we do it here, To save time, no member may speak more than 2 times on any one motion on any one day, and each of those speeches are limited to 10 minutes. Okay? This is Robert's rules, and this is how we conduct meetings in a democracy. And this rule may be the best kept secret of parliamentary procedure. The basis of this rule is that in a democratic process, Mr. Weiner, everyone should be able to participate in the debate. If one member dominates the debate, this reduces the right of the other members. I understand that. But in conventions, because of the large number of people in attendance, we're talking about like City Council, Renaissance, that thing. I can understand the time limits. But this is important stuff when we're coming to the wording, which ultimately results in the codification of law. Because of the large number of people in attendance, the time limit is usually reduced to somewhere between 2 and 5 minutes. I understand that. But in small groups, and by any stretch of the imagination, no one can call this a middling-sized group or even a large group. In small groups, there is no limit to the number of times the member may speak. Now, I'm not talking about me speaking for a half hour. I get sick and tired of hearing myself after 10 minutes. But I think less than 10 minutes limits the ability of anyone to get a point across that's cogent, that's understandable, that might even be, you might even have a predilection towards once you hear it through. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And you had a question?
Not anymore.
Okay.
If I could, if there's time, I just would like to say, if we're going to cut the public participation to an interval, maybe we could do it at the beginning of the meeting. That way, people that don't want to spend the entire meeting here listening will have a chance to comment on something. There was somebody here that left who probably came here to comment. I mean, that's just a suggestion. Thank you.
Okay, great. Motion to adjourn?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.